Ultra.
Goes huge for Ultra, and they get their first home series victory.
Seconds for the win. Simp's going to contest. He's going to get cut to pieces. And what do you know? The greatest underdog going into the tournament. They take the best team in the league the whole way, and they get the job done. Not only do they do it on a respawn, they truly are ultra as ladies and gentlemen, I cannot believe what we have seen today. Toronto Ultra have just taken the major from Atlanta FaZe.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Made in Esports. You know, we're coming here and we got something extremely exciting to talk
Just
about.
another episode. It's a special episode.
Yeah,
Spencer.
you can see I'm wearing the shirt. If you're a fan of the channel, I assume you guys are aware of what we're talking about. But Toronto Ultra, you know, Toronto's Call of Duty franchise, put up probably one of the most dominating, incredible performances, you know, we've seen in the Call of Duty League to date. Going on one of the greatest loser bracket runs of all time. And I mean, again, as somebody who maybe hasn't been following Call of Duty for the past 7 years, that's like a bit of a rash statement. I'll agree. I don't want to debate this, but I think that there's objective ways that you can look at it to really put things in perspective about how impressive Ultra's run truly was. And we're just going to give you a high level, quick sort of breakdown on this weekend because it was truly incredible. And we saw some absolute amazing fans. So if you're a Canadian esports fan, just in general, it was a good fucking weekend. That's all I'm going to say.
Look at Spencer. You should sound more excited. I am gassed up about this. I was hanging out with my girlfriend that night. I was literally screaming at the TV, and she's like, "Chris, what is this?" I'm like, "Imagine you're like the Leafs and they won the cup." I mean, it's not the same, but it's like the Leafs won the cup for the first time in 20 years.
Yeah, it's not really the same because to be fair, it's a major, it's not champs. But I know what you're trying to say. I was again it was one of those things where I was like, oh, I'll have some mimosas and just casually sip while the Ultra game's on, and then it turned into an 8-hour bender. It was I was 8 hours later, I was still going. I think because of the performance that we saw and how impressive it really was.
And guys gave us fan selection for hey, who's gonna win it? Gave Toronto Ultra 0.02% chance of winning it. That's how many fans voted for them. So.
It's truly incredible, and I think that's before we can talk a little bit map by map and just some of the highlights that we really thought. But again, I think it's really important to note how incredible this run actually was for people who don't I'm sure there's been great runs in Call of Duty history. I don't really want to get into the logistics of what it was 5-6 years ago, but I will say that this is arguably one of the most competitive years of Call of Duty of all time, just because of the fact that there's only 12 teams and there's only 4 people per team. The condensed, the amount of talent that is condensed in those 12 teams is truly incredible. When you think about a team like FaZe, for instance, with Simp, Abizi, Celium, Arcides, that's almost theoretically unfair. That team in theory almost shouldn't drop a map, let alone a major like this. Yeah. And not only do you have a league that is that stacked, right? Not only do you have a league of 12 teams that are that fucking talented, but the teams that Ultra had to beat to win this major were the 5 best, right? If you were to think about the teams they had to go through, they had to beat Optic, then they had to beat 100 Thieves, then they had to beat a very talented slept-on Minnesota Rocker team, then they had to beat Dallas Empire, and then they had to finish it off by beating Atlanta FaZe in a 9-game series. You're talking about 5 of the 6 best teams in the league, and for Ultra to really go up there and beat all 5 of them, and some big names in the Call of Duty scene, right? Some really, really massive brands and organizations. They're the first EU team to, I think, win a major since Splice in 2017. You saw some incredible bounce back performances from Bance, who tweeted to his fiance or texted, I'm crap, I might as well just retire, when they were 0-2 in the second major. There was 3 games after. We made a video talking about, is this the last time we're going to see this lineup together? Because going into that weekend, I thought if they had lost versus London and New York, this team could have been, you could have seen Bance potentially go to the bench. He comes back up, gets MVP, drops a 1.4. Has an absolute bounce back performance. So, I mean, again, dude, it was actually just incredible. And to this, I woke up this morning and I was still buzzing from that performance.
Yeah, I agree. I 10 out of 10 agree with that. And we couldn't be more happy. It literally is crazy. But let's break it down. Well, let's break it down. Let's talk about, hey, how the hell did they pull this off? 3 games. 3 games in one day. You know how much game fuel they need for that?
Yeah. So we go that with the first. Again, I don't want to spend too much time. Like, again, if you guys want to watch on a map by map breakdown, like there's some podcasts like The Flank that you could probably listen to. But those first 2 games versus, they obviously lost FaZe in the middle. But when they first beat Optic, I think that was a really great sort of win for this Toronto Ultra team to again show what they're capable of. That was probably the best team that they'd beat to date. One of the biggest wins they'd beat to date. And I think that was like when you started to see CleanX, but more specifically Bant start to come into form. It was when I watched that Optic game that I was like, okay, wait a minute, this like run could be different. CleanX has like a bit of a heater where he's the only actual Toronto Ultra player to go positive. But this was the moment for Bant where I really start to think that we could potentially turn this around. I think we've given Bant a lot of flack for his ability to. I felt like he was always kind of hiding in a corner, like laying down, like always running these long routes. And I know that is his style, but I felt like he was doing it like too much, where I like would have liked to have seen him sort of mix it up and put like more pressure on the map on top of running these routes. And I think this was the first time. It might be all year, but I'm not going to say that because I actually don't know this for sure. But this is the first time that I remember looking at the final scoreboard and realizing that Bance had the most engagements on the team. Like, it was when I looked at that and I was like, wait, Bance had the most engagements on the team? Like, more than CleanX, more than Cammy, more than Insight? Like, generally, I was like, oh, we're in for a good one. Because that's what we've been asking for Bance to do for, like, a long time. And for him to finally come out there versus Optic, get that win, but not only get the win, but actually start, like, playing with that pace that we've wanted to see. I think that really set the stage for the run that, Ultra ended up going on.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that we'll get into a little more detail about it later, but I feel like this win, to a certain extent, almost helps kind of give a little bit of weight to the model that Toronto Ultra went by when going into this year, which is like, let's keep a roster, at least the main parts of it, together to like just create that chemistry that they have. And I think that Bance did play a little bit differently in order to really help him come alive this tournament. But I think there's also like this chemistry intangible bit that kind of fell into place for this tournament as well. Like, I feel like some of the times before when Bance was making flanks and laying down and stuff like that, it may have been the right play, but just because timing was off or something wasn't working, it didn't work out. Yeah. Or, the one big thing we saw in a massive difference in this series was their ability to trade out. And that requires you to be in the right position at the right time and know where your team is in general. So I feel like that chemistry kind of came into play during this series.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. I think the timing was improved, but again, I don't think it can be underestimated, like how differently Bance played. Like Bance, every single map, I swear. I mean, I have to go back and look at the stats, but I'm pretty sure if you go back and look, you'd almost always find that Bance had like the lowest amount of engagements on the team, right? The lowest amount of engagements, the lowest amount of damage. I felt like that was sort of a consistent thing, and I watched him play Optic, and that was not the Bance I was used to seeing. Like, he still had those moments where he would hide in a corner and like be a little ratty, right, and go for the flank and have those pincer moves. Yeah. But he would like mix those up alongside like actually putting map pressure, running down mid, right, trying to slide cancel, trading up for his teammates, getting the trades if Insight gets an individual weak, right? Like, I felt like we started to see like Bance play that more like well-rounded game, like be that player who can run the routes, be that player who can have a cheeky little spot, but also be that player who can again like slide out for CleanX or who can kind of get those trades if like Insight gets somebody weak. Like, I felt like that was what really like separated this team from what we were seeing beforehand, because again, like, I mean, I don't want the engagements don't just tell everything, but this is another instance where like Bance had the most engagements on the team outside of somebody like CleanX, which, like, to be frank, is like, something worth noting in itself.
Yeah, exactly. I also want to just pivot this for a second, talk a little bit more about Insight. Now, Insight is crazy because he puts down an absurd amount of damage, especially for the amount of engagements he has.
Yeah, and we can kind of pivot this into the Minnesota game because, like, I just quickly, like, with the 100 Thieves, we beat 100 Thieves in 3-0. It was a really good, like, I think, confidence builder for Ultra because 100 Thieves are really hot, and I think that 3-0, like, once again established themselves as, like, a potential threat in this league. That was just good for the confidence boosters. But I think the point you're bringing up, Chris, in terms of Insight's ability to output damage while, like, not getting a ton of engagements was, like, super relevant in that Minnesota game. Because again, this was something that, like, I was thinking to myself. I was like, man, Insight he's not like an incredibly fast AR, right? When like the switch was made for Insight for methods, some people were like worried because like Insight we talked a bit about pacing issues, and Insight isn't exactly a fast AI. That's not what he's known for. In fact, I believe he said in an interview his nickname was like Boots, Metal Boots, because he's so slow on the map. But like, my God, can he output damage, right? If you go to Minnesota, I think he has like 50 less engagements than Kleenex, who, by the way, had an insane game versus Minnesota. I'll talk about that in a second. But he had 50 less engagements than Kleenex and only 200 less damage. Like, that is so impressive. And I think it shows what the Ultra was really playing around, where like Insight was really able to like hold down these power positions and get people weak and like direct the subs where to go and who to trade out based around like his positioning on the map. And so even though he wasn't like flying in the map, like taking gunfights like Cammy, Bance, and Kleenex, for instance, his map pressure was always felt. Like, I would love to see his assists. I wish we had that stat, but just by the fact that he was, again, 50 less engagements and only 200 difference in damage is like so impressive.
Yeah, and let's I want to take this a one step further just to talk about how important it is to get damage down even if you don't get the kill. Like, obviously Kleenex was a run in the kills department, but the fact that Insight got so much damage, when you injure a player like that but don't kill him, the one really important thing to notice is that if they're smart, they don't ego chow, they're going to be they're not going to be able, they're going to have to like sit in hiding for a little bit and wait to come up and put more pressure on and move around the map. And that allows our camis, in this case bands too, Kleenex, to go in and get in positions that they need to be in order to exert more map pressure and have more map control. So that's why getting damage, even if it isn't a kill, is so important.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. You're right, because some of these obviously were traded out by Kleenex. Like Kleenex had 103 kills. This is one of the most impressive series by an individual I've ever seen. But not only, you're right, do the kills potentially get traded out, but like it slows down their pressure, right? If they're trying to go for a flank or they're trying to put on a pinch, they're trying to make a play, and all of a sudden you got one guy's like, oh, I can't push on, I'm weak, and then he tries to go again, and the second guy, oh, I can't push on, I'm weak, because Insight's just holding them these power positions. Like, that in itself is providing map pressure. Even though Insight isn't like, again, slide canceling around a corner, his presence is being felt on the map, and like Minnesota is a really good team. Like beating, I think Optic was like, I was like, okay, maybe that's just a one-off. You beat 100 Thieves. That's a new roster that just got introduced. Maybe that makes a little bit sense, right? We're 2 years into this thing. But going up there and beating a new team like Minnesota, I mean, they are also a new team, granted, but a really, really talented team. I wish you guys were watching it with us. We were absolutely pumped. But again, the last thing I want to talk about this Minnesota game was, again, Kleenex. Kleenex this one was one of the greatest Sundays by an individual I've seen, again, over the last couple of years. The second highest kills on the team was Cammy at 79, and then Kleenex had the most with 103. Just actually fucking insane. He drops a 1.2. Again, him and his duo Insight, 1.15, absolutely had himself a map. And I don't want to understate Bance, because even again, Bance, you can tell 16,000 damage, only 900% like behind Insight, only 1,000 behind Kleenex. You can start to see how Bance started to play this sort of different role that I think we've seen him play in the past, and it's one of the reasons why I think we came out on top.
Yeah, I totally understand that. That is just a great thought. And I think unless you have anything else to say, we leave it at that, guys. It was actually, you know what?
We just start with the finals. Start with the finals, yeah.
Well, no, or you can go over finals. I kind of want to talk about after this.
Yeah. So let's talk about the final game versus London, because we beat Dallas, which again was really impressive. I think the map vetoes played a little bit of part, though. We were able to play like some of our best maps, right S&D, right control. I think if we do that series again, you'll start to see a little bit different vetoes come up from Dallas Empire. But again, like Insight had himself an insane checkmate. This maybe Kleenex's only quote unquote bad series, but the team in itself played absolutely incredible. And again, you start to see sort of Bance and them make their presence felt. But going into the final game, a lot of people gassed up Bance here versus FaZe. And I think Bance deserves like all the gas in the world, right? He puts up a 1.44 in a 9-game series. That's absolutely incredible. To go from somebody who was, again, people were like begging him to be benched, ourselves included. We're sort of giving Bance a lot of flack. But for him to come out there and put a 1.44 over a 9-game series against FaZe is so impressive. Like, he had that one S&D where he goes 10-0. Like, the Bance that we were seeing previous to that was not going... the turnaround is absolutely insane. I still can't even fully wrap my head around it. The 180 I think Bance played was so incredible. But the only reason I want to highlight this was, I don't want to take any gas away from Bance, because Bance fucking deserves all of it. But the lack of, I think, MVP conversation surrounding CleanX is just a little bit unfortunate is the best way to put it, because like I want to give this kid some gas. If you're watching the game, like, yeah, CleanX might not have put up a 1.44 like Bance. He only put up a 1.06. But the amount of engagements he had in this map, the amount of kills and the amount of damage is like next level. Again, he had 4,500 more damage than the next highest person on the map. He had more engagements than Simp. He had more kills than Simp. He had a better KD than Simp and Abeezy. Like, he was like literally out Abeezying Abeezy, which is so difficult to do. He had one of the greatest, I think, like Call of Duty moments I've ever seen on that like raid control where he goes on that 7 spree. Again, the highest other than CleanX is 24,100 damage, and CleanX is going 28,600. So absolutely insane. And in my opinion, he was the MVP of that series. You want to give it to Bance, that's fine. The greatest European player of all time, that's fine. Like, again, the last thing I want to do is take gas away. I'm just trying to add a little bit more gas to CleanX's fire because I think he really established himself. Honestly, as a top 5 SMG in this game at this point, I think this guy's a superstar in the making, and I can't speak highly enough for him, and I really hope that, you know, that contract situation gets figured out and we can see him playing in the Toronto Ultra for, you know, years to come, because like this was seriously something special.
Yeah, I understand that. Now, one last thing I want to touch on is, hey, post majors. I think it's really, really important for them to stay vigilant and stay on their toes. Now, the one issue we've always had with parts of this team is consistency. It's being able to do this day in, day out. And that's what we want to see. Right now, this is still, it's a little bit of a blip on the radar. I mean, Inside has caused a clear difference and caused a clear improvement, but we want to be able to see a clear change. And I think another thing to know now is that other teams are not going to be slouching on this Ultra team anymore. Yeah. What that means is that they're going to be watching more VODs. You best believe that Simp and Co., BZ and Co., C9 and Co., they didn't watch a heck of a lot of Toronto VODs ahead of this major. But you know they're on the radar now. They're going to be making sure to really, really train for this team. And the next challenge is for me to see them still play at a high level. Once again, I'm still not expecting them to be top 3, but still play at a high level despite having people actively trying to counter them now.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Again, like obviously, like I'm not going to sit here and act like FaZe and Optic them didn't prepare for Ultra. I think they 100% did. But I think that your point still stands that if you probably think the amount of prep work a team like, you know, Dallas and FaZe put in for certain teams, Ultra was probably lower on the list, right? There's only a certain amount of time. There's only a certain amount of hours in the day. It's limited, right? You know what I mean? So at some point, you got to pick and choose sort of how much time you put into prepping for specific teams before a tournament like this. And I bet you Ultra was a little bit lower on the list in comparison to your Minnesotas, to your Optics, to your FaZes, to your Dallases. And I do agree that teams are going to start to take notice. Like Ultra was, again, one of the best searches teams in the world. We saw this last year in Modern Warfare, right? They win their tournament, they go into champs, and their search start to struggle a little bit because teams start to take notice. Can they continue to innovate? Can they continue to be this elite search team now that people have sort of became aware of what they like to do on the map? And now they're going to start, you know, vetoing raid, search, and destroy, right? Are they going to be able to widen their map pool? There's a lot of question marks around this. The last sort of point I wanted to bring up was, again, like, can they keep this consistency up? I think that a lot of people were kind of like, you know, people want to bench Bance, like, look how wrong they were, look what Bance can do. And while I agree that that is the narrative that should be played, it was funny how, like, at some point, the people who wanted to bench Bance were, like, kind of shit on, right? But on some point, they were also, like, low-key vindicated, because we'd always said about this team was, like, one of the reasons I potentially wanted to see a change was because I felt like this team had this ceiling. If they were able to get more map pressure from their second submachine gun player, they got more map pressure from their second submachine gun player, and then they're able to, you know, win the entire league. So nobody ever sat there and said Bance is a scrub. One of the biggest, I think, question marks surrounding him was always his consistency. We saw this in Modern Warfare. We saw it in Cold War. Can he play like this consistency? These are all question marks coming into the next stage. I don't think there's like an answer right now that we know, but like I'm really excited to find out. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Like I hope that CleanX can put it together. I hope that Cam can keep playing with that ego. And that gunning that he has. I hope Bance can find that consistency, and I hope Insight can keep, you know, providing his map pressure and that leadership that has made this team so successful. I agree they're probably not a solidified top 3 team right now, but can this team be a top 5 team? You know, I had them at number 5 going into the year, number 6. I still think so. Really excited for what they bring, and I think this was just a taste of what we could be seeing for the next few years.
Exactly. Well, hey guys, if you like what you hear today, please like and subscribe or comment. It really, really helps us push out the algorithm to all the other, Toronto fans out there. And if you agree with us, disagree, leave a comment in the comment section. We love chatting with you guys and having a good conversation and figuring stuff out.
Yeah, and who was your MVP and what was your favorite moment of the weekend? If you're a Toronto Ultra fan, what moment had you jumping out of your couch?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Screaming it. For me, it was that Clean X 7-piece. Let me hear what yours is. And with that out of the way, guys, thank you so much for watching. And as always, enjoy.